I handed my passport across the counter, feeling the cold plastic edges between my fingers. The airport lights reflected off the laminated surface, sharp and sterile. The agent glanced at the page, her expression unreadable, then back at me. "You're not on this flight," she said. The words hit me slowly, like water dripping in a quiet room. At first, I thought I had misshared. I raised my head and looked toward the gate. My family was there, moving through the line like I didn't exist. My sister glanced over her shoulder, smirked, and lifted her phone to snap a selfie. No one else turned back. No one even paused. They were gone, and I was left holding a passport that might as well have been a brick. I stepped back, letting the people behind me flow past. The hum of the terminal filled the silence where my voice should have been. I couldn't speak. I couldn't process it all at once. All I could do was watch them disappear, sitting in a quiet corner of the airport. I tried to organize my thoughts. I replayed the last weeks, every small interaction I had brushed aside as trivial. Every joke, every comment, every favor I had offered, every moment I had made life easier for them. All now read differently. What had seemed ordinary was actually evidence of their disregard. I had been invisible, just a background fixture, until it suited them otherwise. I remembered the arguments over money, over schedules, over the smallest things that now seemed irrelevant in hindsight. I remembered my own hesitations, how often I had tried to smooth things over to avoid conflict, how often I had assumed loyalty meant something permanent. I realized that trust in their hands had been conditional, fragile, manipulable, and entirely one-sided. I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over the screen. The message came carefully, deliberately. "Check your accounts when you land." I did not type anything inflammatory. I did not add exclamation points or threats, just facts, simple and precise. A quiet acknowledgement that actions had consequences. A reminder that structure could enforce boundaries even when people refused to acknowledge them. Time dragged. The lights of the airport shifted from harsh glare to soft, diffused evening illumination. I watched families reunite, business travelers hurry past, announcements drone on. The minutes stretched long enough that I could feel the weight of each one, marking the slow unfolding of events I had no control over, and yet secretly more control than I had allowed myself to recognize. I thought about their casual dismissal, my sister's smirk, the selfies. It was infuriating, the kind of small humiliation that eats at the edges of your focus, yet I felt a surprising calm. Anger had no purchase here. Any outburst, any confrontation would have been just another opportunity for them to ignore or dismiss me. Patience, observation, and timing, those were my allies now. Hours passed. Somewhere between boarding announcements and the steady hum of the terminal, I felt the shift begin. My phone pinged once. Small, quiet, almost unnoticeable. But I knew what had changed. Access I had provided, or allowed to remain open, had been recalibrated. Systems I relied upon for subtle control of shared responsibilities were now asserting their boundaries without drama or spectacle. Their assumptions about me, about what I would tolerate, about how easily I could be manipulated, were beginning to crumble. It was not vengeance. It was not chaos. It was consequence. Clean, precise, and unavoidable. They would notice eventually. They would have to adjust, to account for things they never thought they needed to. I had intervened in a way they could not dismiss. Authority had entered, but not through shouting, not through public confrontation. Through structure, rules, systems, the mechanisms everyone accepts, but often forgets to respect. I remembered how easy it had been to accommodate them before, how silently I'd carried their schedules, their finances, their expectations. Now those invisible threads had shifted. I was no longer a fixture, no longer invisible, no longer anyone's unpaid assistant in life. I existed independently, and the quiet certainty of that existence was more satisfying than any moment of dramatic confrontation ever could be. By the time I walked to my own gate, the airport had grown quieter. Shadows stretched across polished floors, people clustered around charging stations, some dozing, others focused on screens. I felt no triumph, no bitterness, only steadiness. My power was quiet, but undeniable. No one had applauded, no one had cheered. And I did not need them to. The plane I boarded was different, smaller, less crowded. A flight I had chosen because it took me away from the orbit of people who could erase me so casually. I sank into the seat and let my body relax for the first time in days. I thought about the balance that had quietly shifted in my favor. I thought about the control I now had, not flashy, not theatrical, but real and enforceable. And I thought about them. Some were still moving through terminals and taxis, oblivious to the shift that had already begun to define their reality. I closed my eyes and let the hum of the plane, the slight vibrations beneath me, the slow climb toward altitude, become the rhythm of calm. There was no victory song, no dramatic confrontation to replay. Just clarity, a realization that I did not need to be seen, noticed, or validated to maintain my power. The world had moved, and I had moved too, on my own terms. As the plane leveled, I thought of the lives I had untangled myself from, of the responsibilities that no longer belonged to me. I thought of how easily familiarity can become entitlement, and how quickly trust can be weaponized in subtle ways. And I realized that my own clarity, my own self-possession, was something they could never touch. By the time we touched down, I felt a strange weight lift from my chest. Not triumph, not relief, not joy, just a steady recognition of self, unshakable and quiet. I would navigate the consequences that rippled outward, but they would no longer define me. I had been removed from their orbit, and for the first time in years, I was unbound. And in that quiet, alone on the plane, I smiled faintly, not at them, not at what had happened, but at the realization that I could exist fully, independently, and be entirely undisturbed by the echoes of their disregard. The calm after the storm, uncelebrated, complete, and mine.